Buying a property in France can seem a little complicated, and especially if you are a foreign buyer. So, what we're going to do is that in this video, I'm going to walk you through the whole process step by step to buy real estate in France as a foreigner. Whether you are a future resident, looking for a second home, or looking to make a rental investment, this video is for you. Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Julian Laboda. I have been an investor for 2012, and on this channel I help foreign buyers to invest in real estate in France by avoiding all the pitfalls. The first step you need to take to carry out your real estate investment project is to clearly define your project. Before you even start researching, there are a few things you need to clear up that are extremely important. For example, you must define the budget you want to allocate to your acquisition. You need to define where you want to buy. You need to define whether you want to buy a primary residence to live as a French resident all year round. You must define whether it is rather a second home that you are going to pass through earlier, a few months in the year, or if you make a rental investment. This phase is extremely important because in France, the location, the use you are going to make of your residence, as well as the taxes, can drastically change the long-term profitability of your investment. The second step is to define your budget precisely and realistically. This is extremely important because in France, the total cost of a real estate purchase project exceeds the simple purchase price of the property itself. It is important to understand that in France, when you buy a property, you will have to pay different taxes, different things in addition to the purchase price of the property itself. And so, the total cost of your project will consist of several elements. Of course, you will have the purchase price of your property, which is the most important element. You will add what is called in France the notary fees. Notary fees represent about 7 to 8% of the price of your property. You may add costs related to the renovation of your property if you buy a fairly old property and need to carry out renovation work. And then, if you use a mortgage in France, you will also have to pay for it when you buy your property. In particular, application fees, mortgage fees, or guarantee fees related to real estate loans in France. A little parenthesis, by the way, as a foreigner, you can get a mortgage in France, but be aware that the conditions will be quite strict on this subject. This step is really extremely important because it's where I see the most mistakes happening in the people I accompany. They usually forget all the ancillary costs, they only focus on the price of the property, and they find themselves in a slightly complicated situation because they realize that they have to take out much more money than initially planned. The third step is immediately more pleasant. It is to search for properties and to embark on visits. It is important to understand that in France, there is no general listing of all properties of all real estate that are for sale in the country. Each property owner is free to put his or her property up for sale directly, i.e., each person can sell a property directly from individual to individual, but he or she can also go through one or more real estate agencies. And it is for this reason that you will probably find the same property listed on different real estate sites or in different real estate agencies with slightly different characteristics, with slightly different prices, and with different photographs as well. So don't be surprised, it's quite normal and you have to take the time to compare. Call, and then once you have found properties that interest you, visiting in person is extremely important. And if you can't travel yourself, I recommend that you call on a trusted person who will do the visits for you. Above all, please never buy without visiting, because it is not uncommon, unfortunately, for things to be hidden from you on the ads that you will only be able to see by moving around the property, that you will only be able to realize for yourself. The fourth step is to make an offer to purchase a property. What is an offer to purchase? It is a written document in which you will offer a purchase price to the seller of the property you are interested in. This purchase price, well, it can be the same as the seller's asking price, but it can also be lower. That is to say, you can negotiate and offer a price that is lower than what the seller is asking, and the seller is then free to accept or reject your proposal. But this offer to purchase, it shows your seriousness, it shows your commitment.
And generally, you will also put the conditions under which you will buy this property. In particular, do you take out a mortgage or do you buy cash? As they say, in cash.
If the seller accepts your offer to purchase, then the property is removed from the market. And it is from this moment that things will become much more formal and, above all, much more legal. We therefore arrive at the fifth step, which consists of signing the preliminary contract. But in France, it is called either the unilateral promise of sale or the preliminary sales agreement. For this video, the difference between these two terms is not very important, but it is important to understand that in both cases, it is at this stage that things will become extremely formal. In this document, you will put all the information, all the clauses, all the conditions of the real estate transaction. You will put the price at which you have agreed with the seller. You will put the conditions under which you buy. Do you seek financing or do you buy with your money? And then all the conditions that you may deem essential to help you to facilitate this purchase. For example, you can specify that you don't want to buy for 6 months. In particular, you will set the date of signature. There you have it. There are a lot of things you can put in the sales agreement, and it's very important to take the time to do this step well. Generally, it is the notary who takes care of doing this. There are many real estate agencies that offer to do this too. But I recommend that you, as an expert, always call on a notary because we'll talk about this in a moment, but the notary is a public ministerial officer who must follow a legal process and who is there to defend your interests. From the moment you have signed the preliminary sale agreement or the promise of sale, as a buyer, you have a 10-day withdrawal period during which you can cancel the sale without having to justify yourself. Once you have passed this withdrawal period, things are much more complicated. In theory, you are committed to seeing the sale through to the end. Sixth step, the notary and the legal steps. I told you about it a minute ago. The notary is an extremely important person. It is important to know that in France, real estate transactions are one of the most secure in the world because they comply with a legal and precise framework, and that in France, the notary is mandatory for all real estate transactions. The notary is a public ministerial agent representing the state who has many missions with the main objective of ensuring that the sale takes place in the best possible conditions. The notary is there to protect the buyer and the seller. But I recommend that you always have your own notary. That is to say, it is quite possible to have only one notary in a transaction. But what I recommend to you is that you, as a buyer, have your notary. And if the seller opposite is also his own notary, it won't cost you more. Under these conditions, the two notaries share the commission. So it's exactly the same price for you as a buyer, and it doesn't change anything for the seller either. So the notary at this stage will have a lot of role. He will check that the seller is indeed the owner of the property. He will check that there is no right of preemption. He will check that everything is in order, that everything is in compliance from a legal point of view, that there are no hidden defects. He will also inform you of any natural risks that may be present.
At the place where you decide to buy, there are areas in which there is a risk of flooding, areas in which there is a risk of earthquakes, for example. And he will also be in charge of collecting all the documents. He will check that the funds are transferred.
In short, the notary is the person who will do all the work for you and who will give you the guarantee that you will buy in a 100% secure way. Keep in mind that this stage lasts between 2 and 3 months. And finally, the seventh and final step, the signature and keys. At that point, the funds are transferred from the buyer to the seller. The transfer of ownership is officially signed at the notary's office. You pick up the keys and congratulations, you are now the owner of a property in France. Welcome. At the conclusion of this video, you have understood that buying real estate in France is not very complicated, but you have to understand each step and what it is for. If you want to go further, I have created a guide that is 100% free in which I explain the process of buying real estate in France step by step. Click here to download it or click on the link in the description of this video. You will see that I explain everything from A to Z. Remember to subscribe, like, and activate the little bell to be informed of the next videos I will publish, and do not hesitate to ask me your questions in the comments. I will answer them with great pleasure. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you soon for a future video.